Close your eyes now and let your breathing slow. Feel yourself sinking deeper into comfort as we journey together through time and mist. Back to a world wrapped in emerald green, where ancient secrets sleep beneath towering trees. Picture yourself walking along a narrow path through the most magnificent jungle you've ever imagined. The air is warm and humid, carrying the rich scent of earth and growing things. Above you, a canopy of leaves filters the golden sunlight into dancing patterns of light and shadow. Vines drape like curtains between massive tree trunks, and somewhere in the distance, you hear the haunting call of a howler monkey echoing through the forest. This is the rainforest of Mesoamerica, stretching across what we now call Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and Honduras. But long before these modern borders existed, long before the Spanish conquistadors arrived with their steel and horses, this jungle was home to one of the most remarkable civilizations our world has ever known. They called themselves by many names, but we know them as the Maya. The morning mist clings to the forest floor as you continue your gentle walk. With each step, you're moving not just through space, but through time itself, traveling back over 1,000 years. The jungle around you begins to whisper with memory. If you listen carefully, you can almost hear the echoes of voices that once filled these green corridors with life and laughter, prayer and celebration. The Maya were not a single tribe or kingdom, but rather a tapestry of city-states and communities, each with its own character, yet all sharing a remarkable culture that would flourish for over 2 millennia. From the misty highlands of Guatemala to the flat limestone plains of the Yucatan Peninsula, from the Pacific coast to the Caribbean shores, Maya people created a civilization that was both deeply rooted in the natural world and soaringly ambitious in its achievements. Imagine the first Maya settlers arriving in this lush landscape over 3,000 years ago. They came not as conquerors of nature, but as partners with it. They learned to read the seasons and the flight patterns of birds, to predict the rains by watching the behavior of animals, to find fresh water by following the sound of underground rivers flowing through limestone caves. As you walk deeper into the forest of memory, you begin to notice something extraordinary. At first, it's just a sense that the trees ahead are arranged a little too perfectly, that the small hill rising before you has edges that seem almost too straight. You brush away hanging vines and step into a clearing, and suddenly you realize that what you thought was a natural hill is actually something far more magnificent. Before you rises a pyramid, its limestone blocks now softened by centuries of moss and small trees that have taken root between the stones. This is how the modern world first encountered the Maya, not through books or legends, but through moments just like this, when jungle explorers and archaeologists suddenly found themselves face to face with architectural marvels that seemed to emerge from the earth itself, like sleeping giants awakening. The Maya built their cities in harmony with the jungle, and when those cities were eventually abandoned, the forests lovingly embraced them, covering them with a green blanket that preserved them for future generations to discover. Temple tops became hills crowned with trees. Plaza floors disappeared beneath layers of fertile soil. Carved monuments were wrapped in roots and vines like precious gifts waiting to be unwrapped. But who were these people who chose to make their home in such a challenging environment? The rainforest is not an easy place to build a civilization. It's hot and humid, filled with dangerous animals, prone to floods during the rainy season and drought during the dry months. Disease-carrying insects buzz through the thick air, and the very abundance of plant life makes clearing space for agriculture a constant struggle. Yet the Maya not only survived here, they thrived. They transformed the jungle into one of the most densely populated regions in the ancient world. At the height of their civilization, more people lived in the Maya lowlands than live there today. Cities like Tikal in Guatemala and Calakmul in Mexico were home to hundreds of thousands of people, their populations rivaling those of medieval London or Paris. The secret to their success lay in their deep understanding of their environment. The Maya didn't fight against the jungle. They learned to dance with it. They developed sophisticated agricultural techniques that worked with the natural cycles of the forest. They practiced what we might call permaculture today, creating forest gardens where fruit trees, medicinal plants, and food crops all grew together in careful harmony. They learned that the massive cecropia trees were the first to colonize clearings, so they used these fast-growing giants as natural timers for their agricultural cycles. They discovered that certain palms could tell them about soil conditions, and that the flowering patterns of specific trees could predict the coming of rains. The Maya became master readers of nature's calendar, and in return, the forest provided for all their needs. In the dappled sunlight of your imagined clearing, you can almost see them. Maya families going about their daily lives centuries ago. Children playing games with rubber balls while their mothers weave colorful textiles on backstrap looms. Men returning from the forest gardens with baskets full of corn, beans, squash, and tropical fruits. Elders sharing stories and wisdom under the shade of a great ceiba tree, which the Maya considered sacred, the world tree that connected the earth to the heavens. The Maya were farmers and astronomers, warriors and artists, merchants and mathematicians. They were people who could calculate the movements of Venus with stunning accuracy, while also knowing exactly which forest plants could cure a fever or heal a wound. They built cities that reached toward the stars while keeping their feet firmly planted in the rich, dark soil of the jungle floor. Their society was complex and stratified, with nobles and commoners, priests and craftspeople, all playing their part in the grand symphony of Maya life. But perhaps most remarkably, they were united by a shared worldview that saw the universe as alive and interconnected. To the Maya, every tree had a spirit, every mountain was sacred, and every day was part of an endless cosmic dance of creation and renewal. As evening approaches in your jungle journey, you find yourself sitting on the steps of the ancient pyramid, watching the sun set through the forest canopy. The stones beneath you still hold the warmth of the day, and you can feel the deep peace that comes from being in a place where humans and nature have learned to live in harmony. The Maya understood something that we are only beginning to remember, that we are not separate from the natural world, but part of it. Their cities were not imposed upon the landscape like scars, but grew from it like flowering plants. Their pyramids and temples followed the contours of the land. Their plazas captured the flow of rainwater, and their buildings were oriented to catch the cooling breezes and frame views of sacred mountains on the horizon. Listen now to the evening sounds of the forest. Somewhere in the canopy above, a toucan calls with its deep, resonant voice. Howler monkeys begin their twilight chorus. Crickets start their gentle symphony, and in the distance, you might hear the splash of a fish jumping in a hidden sea. These are the same sounds that Maya children heard as they drifted off to sleep in houses, built of wood and thatch, nestled safely within their forest cities. The Maya gave us so many gifts that we use every day without even realizing it. The chocolate that melts on your tongue was first prepared by Maya cooks, who believed cacao was food for the gods. The chewing gum that children enjoy comes from the chicle tree that Maya workers have harvested for generations. The bright red tomatoes and fiery chili peppers in your kitchen were first cultivated by Maya farmers who understood the subtle art of plant breeding. But perhaps their greatest gift was their way of seeing the world, not as something to be conquered or controlled, but as a living, breathing entity to be respected and celebrated. They knew that humans were just one thread in the great web of life, and that our well-being depended on the well-being of all our plant and animal neighbors. In their mythology, humans were made from corn by the gods, after earlier attempts with mud and wood had failed. This was unjust a creation story. It was a reminder that we are literally made from the same substance as our food, that we are part of the endless cycle of growth, harvest, death, and rebirth that governs all life on Earth, as full darkness settles over the forest. Fireflies begin to dance between the trees like tiny falling stars. The pyramid beside you seems to glow with a gentle inner light, as if the limestone itself remembers the torches and copal incense that once illuminated sacred ceremonies here. You close your eyes and listen to the night sounds of the jungle, feeling yourself becoming part of this ancient landscape. The boundary between past and present dissolves like mist, and you understand that the Maya are not really gone. They live on in the millions of people who still speak Maya languages, who still grow corn and beans using ancient techniques, who still remember the old stories and honor the old ways. They live on in every child who looks up at the night sky with wonder, in every farmer who plants seeds with reverence, in every person who understands that we are all connected to each other, to the earth, and to the great mystery that flows through all things. The jungle around you pulses with life and memory. Tree roots reach deep into soil enriched by countless generations of Maya people. Vines climb toward stars that Maya astronomers mapped with breathtaking precision. Water flows through the same limestone caves where Maya pilgrims once left offerings to the rain god Chalk. And now, as the night deepens and the forest settles into its ancient rhythms, you too can rest. Let yourself sink deeper into comfort, surrounded by the protective embrace of the jungle, cradled by the wisdom of people who knew how to live in harmony with the natural world. The Maya built their civilization to last not just for years or decades, but for millennia. They thought in terms of cycles that spanned thousands of years, and they created art and architecture and knowledge that would endure long after their cities returned to the jungle. In the same way, let yourself think beyond the worries of tomorrow or the regrets of yesterday. Rest in the eternal now, in the peace that connects all things. The mist rises from the forest floor, soft and white and gentle. It wraps around you like a blanket woven from moonbeams and dreams. You are safe here in this place where time moves differently, where the boundary between sleeping and waking becomes as soft as morning fog. Sleep now, and dream of ancient cities emerging from morning mist, of people who learn to live as part of the natural world, of pyramids that rise like mountains toward the star-filled sky. Dream of the Maya, who remind us that we too are part of something magnificent and eternal, the great ongoing story of life on Earth. As the morning sun filters through the canopy above, you find yourself standing at the edge of a vast clearing. The mist is just beginning to lift, revealing shapes that make your breath catch in wonder. Rising before you, like a mountain crafted by the gods themselves, stands a Maya pyramid. Its limestone steps ascend in perfect geometric precision, each level smaller than the last, creating a stairway that seems to lead directly into the heavens. This is Tikal, the jewel of the Maya world, where some of the tallest structures built by ancient Americans reach toward the clouds. The pyramid before you, Temple of the Grand Jaguar, rises over 150 feet into the air, taller than a 15-story building. Yet it was constructed entirely without metal tools, without wheels, without beasts of burden to carry the massive stones. Run your hand along the cool limestone blocks as you begin to climb the ancient steps. Each stone was cut with obsidian blades, sharper than any modern scalpel, fitted together with a precision that still amazes engineers today. The Maya masons who built this temple over 1,300 years ago worked with a patience and skill that speaks to something deeper than mere construction. This was an act of devotion, a prayer made manifest in stone. As you climb higher, feeling the solid weight of each step beneath your feet, you begin to understand the profound relationship between Maya architecture and their understanding of the cosmos. These pyramids weren't built randomly or carelessly. Every angle, every proportion, every detail was calculated to reflect the Maya's sophisticated knowledge of mathematics, astronomy, and sacred geometry. The pyramid you're reclimbing is aligned with extraordinary precision to capture the rays of the sun at specific times of the year. During the spring and autumn, the setting sun creates a play of light and shadow on the pyramid's faces that seems almost magical. The Maya builders knew exactly how to position their structures so that the movements of celestial bodies would paint patterns of light across the stone, turning their temples into cosmic calendars written in shadow and sunlight. Reach the top now and catch your breath as you look out over the canopy. From this height, you can see other pyramids rising like islands from the sea of green below. Temple of the Mask, Temple of the Inscriptions, the Lost World Complex, each one a masterpiece of engineering and artistry. Each one telling part of the story of a civilization that saw no separation between the earthly and the divine. But these pyramids were more than just impressive monuments. They were the beating hearts of Maya cities, the centers around which entire communities organized their lives. The pyramid you stand upon was built over an earlier, smaller temple, which itself was constructed over an even older shrine. Layer upon layer, generation upon generation, the Maya continuously rebuilt and expanded their sacred spaces, creating architectural palimpsests that recorded centuries of devotion and craftsmanship. Imagine the scene that would have unfolded here during the height of Maya civilization. The steps beneath your feet would have been crowded with pilgrims and worshippers, their colorful cotton clothing bright against the pale limestone. The air would have been thick with the smoke of copal incense, carried by priests dressed in elaborate costumes of jade and the sound of conch shell trumpets would have echoed across the plaza, calling the community together for ceremonies that connected the earthly realm with the world of the gods. Descend now from the pyramid's peak, letting each step downward carry you deeper into relaxation. As you reach the great plaza at the pyramid's base, you find yourself surrounded by architectural wonders that showcase the full range of Maya building skills. To your left stands a palace complex, its rooms and courtyards arranged in patterns that seem to flow like water, following the natural contours of the land while creating spaces perfectly suited for both daily life and royal ceremony. The palace walls are covered in stucco reliefs that once blazed with color, reds and blues and yellows as vibrant as tropical birds. These weren't just decorations, but historical records carved in stone, telling the stories of kings and queens, recording the dates of great victories and important ceremonies. The Maya turned their buildings into books, covering every surface with hieroglyphs and images that spoke to those who knew how to read them. Walk through the palace corridors now, your footsteps echoing softly in chambers that once housed Maya nobility. The rooms are arranged around courtyards that capture cooling breezes.
Each doorway is perfectly proportioned, each window positioned to frame views of sacred mountains or important temples. The Maya architects understood that buildings should not just shelter the body, but also nourish the soul. Move beyond the palace complex now and discover the ball court along. Narrow playing field, flanked by sloping walls that rise like stone waves frozen in time. This is where the Maya played their sacred ball game, a sport that was part athletics, part religious ritual, and part cosmic drama. The ball court's acoustics are so perfect that a whisper spoken at one end can be heard clearly at the other, demonstrating the Maya's sophisticated understanding of sound and space. The ball court reminds us that Maya architecture was unjust about creating impressive monuments. It was about designing spaces that could enhance human experience and connect people to the sacred dimensions of existence. Every Maya building was carefully planned to serve multiple purposes: practical, aesthetic, and spiritual. As you continue your exploration, you come to the observatory, a circular tower that rises like a stone lighthouse from the jungle floor. Here, Maya, astronomers track the movements of planets and stars with incredible precision. Their observations recorded in stone tablets that rival the accuracy of modern instruments. The windows in the observatory walls are positioned to frame specific celestial events, the rising of Venus, the passage of the Pleiades, the movement of the moon through its phases. The Maya built their observatories not just to study the sky, but to understand humanity's place in the cosmic order. They knew that the same mathematical relationships that governed the movements of planets also appeared in the proportions of their buildings, the patterns of their art, and the rhythms of their ceremonies. Architecture for the Maya was a way of harmonizing human life with the greater music of the universe. Now let yourself wander through the residential areas that surround the great ceremonial centers. Here, you will find that even the humblest Maya homes were built with the same attention to proportion and harmony that characterized their greatest temples. Houses were arranged around courtyards that provided cooling shade and private spaces for family activities. Cooking areas were positioned to take advantage of prevailing winds that would carry smoke away from living spaces. Storage platforms were built to keep food supplies dry during the rainy season. The Maya understood that good architects should serve the needs of daily life while also connecting inhabitants to the natural world and the realm of the sacred. Their houses had no windows in our modern sense, but instead featured carefully planned openings that controlled light and airflow, creating spaces that were cool and comfortable even in the tropical heat.
As the afternoon sun begins to slant through the forest canopy, casting long shadows across the ancient plaza, you find yourself drawn to one of the most remarkable features of Maya architecture, the corbel arch. Unlike the true arch used by Romans and other ancient builders, the Maya arch is created by gradually extending each course of stones inward until they meet at the top, creating a distinctive pointed profile that has become synonymous with Maya design. These corbel arches allowed the Maya to create interior spaces that were both functional and beautiful, with doorways that seemed to frame the world beyond like living paintings. Step through one of these ancient doorways, and you'll find yourself in chambers where the play of light and shadow creates an atmosphere of profound peace and contemplation. The Maya were master craftsmen who understood that true architecture goes beyond mere construction to become a form of poetry written in stone. They knew how to use texture and proportion, light and shadow, to create spaces that affected the emotions and lifted the spirit. Walking through their buildings even today, you can feel the presence of the artisans who lovingly shaped each stone, who carefully planned each detail to create harmony between human needs and cosmic principles. As evening approaches in your journey through these architectural marvels, you find yourself sitting in a quiet courtyard, surrounded by walls that have witnessed over 1,000 years of human stories. The stones around you have been warmed by countless suns, cooled by countless rains, and touched by countless hands. They hold within them the memory of the builders who placed them, the families who lived beside them, and the countless generations who found shelter and solace within their embrace. The Maya built their cities not just for their own time, but for eternity. They understood that true architecture should serve not just the immediate needs of the builders, but also the long-term needs of the community and the land itself. Their buildings were designed to weather storms, to resist earthquakes, to provide homes for both humans and the forest creatures that lived alongside them. Looking up at the pyramid that dominates the plaza, you can see how the Maya architects achieved something remarkable. They created structures that are simultaneously monumental and intimate, impressive and welcoming. The pyramid's massive scale inspires awe and reverence, while its carefully proportioned steps and terraces create a sense of order and harmony that brings peace to the soul. The Maya knew that architecture has the power to shape consciousness, to influence how people think and feel and relate to one another. They designed their buildings to encourage contemplation, to foster community, and to remind inhabitants of their connection to the larger cosmos. Walking through a Maya city was like moving through a three-dimensional map, where every structure and space was positioned to create a harmony that could be felt in the body and soul. As night falls over the ancient city, you begin to see it as it truly is, not just a collection of impressive buildings, but a carefully orchestrated symphony of stone and space light and shadow human need and cosmic principle. The Maya architects were not just builders, but philosophers and poets who used stone and mortar to create physical expressions of their deepest spiritual insights. The pyramids around you begin to glow softly in the moonlight, their limestone surfaces seeming to capture and hold the gentle radiance of the stars. These monuments have survived wars and weather, conquest and neglect, continuing to stand as testimonies to the skill and vision of their builders. They remind us that when human beings work with patience, skill, and reverence, they can create things of lasting beauty that will inspire and shelter generations yet to come. Rest now in this courtyard of memory, surrounded by walls that have sheltered countless dreams and witnessed countless prayers. Feel the solid presence of the stone beneath you, the product of millions of years of geological time, shaped by human hands into forms that speak to the eternal human need for beauty, order, and connection to something greater than ourselves. The Maya architects understood that buildings should be more than mere shelters. They should be sanctuaries for the human spirit, places where people can find peace and inspiration, connection and contemplation. They built their cities to be reflections of the cosmic order, where every structure had its place and purpose, where the arrangement of buildings created a harmony that could be felt and experienced by all who entered. Listen now to the gentle night sounds echoing off the ancient stones, the soft hoot of an owl from the forest, the distant splash of water flowing through limestone channels, the whisper of wind moving through corridors that have channeled countless breezes. These sounds have been part of this place for centuries, creating a natural music that the Maya architects incorporated into their designs. The Maya built their monuments to last, not just for decades or centuries, but for millennia. They thought in terms of deep time, understanding that their architectural legacy would be judged not by a single generation, but by the accumulated wisdom of ages. This long-term perspective allowed them to create buildings that improve with age, that become more beautiful as they weather and soften, as they become integrated with the natural landscape that surrounds them. As you prepare to rest surrounded by these ancient stones, you can feel the presence of all the master builders who came before. The architects who conceived these monuments, the masons who shaped each stone, the artists who carved the decorations, the laborers who carried the massive blocks into place. Their skill and dedication created something that transcends mere building to become a form of prayer made manifest in stone. The pyramids and palaces around you stand as reminders that human beings are capable of creating works of extraordinary beauty and permanence when they work with patience, skill, and reverence for the materials and the landscape. The Maya architects showed us that true architecture is not about imposing human will upon the natural world, but about finding ways to create harmony between human needs and the larger patterns of existence. Sleep now, cradled by walls that have provided shelter and comfort for over 1,000 years. Let yourself be supported by the same stones that have supported countless generations before you. Rest in the knowledge that you are part of a long lineage of human beings who have found wonder and peace in the presence of great architecture. Dream of pyramids rising like prayers toward the star-filled sky, of palaces where ancient wisdom still echoes in the corridors, of courtyards where moonlight pools like liquid silver on time-worn stones. Dream of the master builders who understood that architecture is not just about creating shelter, but about creating spaces where the human spirit can flourish and find its place in the cosmic order. Let the ancient stones sing you to sleep with their silent song of permanence and beauty. Rest well, knowing that you carry within you the memory of these architectural marvels, these testimonies to the human capacity for creating lasting beauty and harmony with the natural world. The mist rises again from the forest floor, soft and protective, wrapping around you and the ancient monuments like a gentle blanket. Sleep deeply, and let your dreams be filled with the eternal peace that dwells within places built with love, skill, and reverence for the sacred dimensions of existence. Settle into comfort now, and let your breathing find its natural rhythm. Feel your heartbeat, steady and reliable, marking the passage of moments like a gentle drum in the forest of your being. Tonight, we journey deeper into the mysteries of the Maya, but this time we explore not their buildings of stone, but their architecture of time itself. The sacred calendars that turned the passage of days into a cosmic symphony. Picture yourself sitting in a quiet chamber within a Maya observatory, surrounded by walls covered in intricate carvings. The air is cool and still, carrying the faint scent of copal incense that has been burned here for centuries. Before you lies a circular stone disk, its surface covered with symbols and numbers that seem to dance in the flickering light of oil lamps. This is a calendar stone, and it holds within its carved surface one of humanity's most sophisticated understandings of time and cosmic order. The Maya didn't see time as we do today, as a straight line stretching from past to future, marked by the relentless ticking of mechanical clocks. Instead, they understood time as a series of interwoven cycles, like wheels within wheels, each turning at its own pace, each contributing to the grand rhythm of existence. Time for the Maya was alive, sacred, and infinitely meaningful. Run your fingers along the carved surface of the calendar stone, feeling the precision of each symbol, the careful placement of each date marker. The Maya developed not just one calendar, but multiple calendars, each designed to track different aspects of cosmic time. These calendars worked together like the gears of an intricate clockwork, creating a system so sophisticated that it rivals the precision of modern astronomical instruments. The first calendar, known as the Tukan, was the sacred calendar of 260 days. This cycle combined 20-day signs with 30 numbers, creating a pattern that repeated every 260 days. Each day in this calendar had its own personality, its own spiritual significance, its own gifts and challenges. The Maya believed that the day on which you were born shaped your character and destiny, much like we might think of astrological signs today. Imagine the Maya Dakipa, the priest astronomer who kept track of these sacred cycles. Sitting in this very chamber as the sun set over the jungle canopy, he would consult his calendar stones and bark paper books, calculating the cosmic influences that would shape the coming days. Each date was a doorway into understanding, a key to unlocking the mysteries of divine will and cosmic purpose. The second calendar, the Hab, tracked the solar year with remarkable precision. This calendar had 365 days, divided into 80 months of 20 days each, plus 5 additional days at the end of the year that were considered especially sacred and potentially dangerous. The Maya calculated the length of the solar year as 365.2420 days, a measurement so accurate that it differs from our modern calculations by only about 2 minutes. Think about the patience and dedication required to achieve such precision. Maya astronomers spent lifetimes watching the sky, tracking the movements of the sun, moon, and planets with nothing but their eyes and their sophisticated understanding of mathematics. They built observatories with windows positioned to frame specific celestial events, turning their buildings into giant astronomical instruments. As you sit in this chamber of time, you can almost see the ancient astronomers at work, night after night, year after year, recording their observations on stone tablets and bark paper. They tracked the cycles of Venus with such accuracy that they could predict its movements hundreds of years into the future. They knew when eclipses would occur, when comets would return, when the planets would align in specific configurations. But the Maya understanding of time went far beyond mere astronomical calculation. They saw time as a living force, a river of energy that flowed through all existence, connecting past, present, and future in an eternal dance of creation and renewal. Each day was a unique moment in this cosmic flow, with its own energy, its own possibilities, its own spiritual significance. The most magnificent of all Maya calendars was the long count, a system designed to track vast periods of time stretching back to the very beginning of the current world age. According to Maya mythology, the world had been created and destroyed several times before, and they were living in the Fifth World Age, which had begun on a date that corresponds to August 11th, 3114 BCE in our calendar. The long count calendar was like a cosmic odometer, recording not just days and years, but entire eras of existence. It counted in units that grew progressively larger: kin, winal, ton, kayathan, and birkton. The system could track dates millions of years into the past and future, reflecting the Maya understanding that time was infinite and cyclical. Imagine the profound shift in consciousness that comes from thinking about time in such vast scales. While we might plan for weeks or months ahead, the Maya were planning for millennia. They understood that the actions of today would ripple forward through time, affecting generations yet unborn. This long-term perspective influenced everything from their agricultural practices to their architectural projects, to their spiritual beliefs. Close your eyes now and let yourself feel the rhythm of the cosmic wheels turning. The Tzolk'in calendar spinning like a prayer wheel, its 260 days marking the sacred heartbeat of existence. The Hob calendar following the sun's journey through the seasons, its 365 days tracking the eternal cycle of planting and harvest, death and rebirth. The long count marking the slow passage of eras, like the breathing of the universe itself. The Maya believed that these calendars were not human inventions, but divine revelations, gifts from the gods that allowed mortals to understand their place in the cosmic order. Each calendar cycle was presided over by different deities, each with their own personalities and powers. The day signs were associated with animals, plants, and natural forces, creating a rich tapestry of meaning that connected every moment to the larger web of existence. On feast days calculated by their calendars, the Maya would gather in the great plazas surrounding their pyramids and temples. The air would be thick with incense and filled with the sound of drums, flutes, and rattles. Dancers wearing elaborate costumes would move in patterns that mimicked the movements of the planets, turning the entire ceremony into a living representation of cosmic time. The Maya calendar system was so sophisticated that it included corrections for the slight irregularities in celestial movements. They knew that the lunar month was not exactly 29.5 days, and they developed complex formulas to account for these variations. They understood that Venus appeared as both morning and evening star, and they could predict exactly when it would transition from one phase to another. But perhaps most remarkably, the Maya calendars were designed to work together, creating what scholars call the calendar round, a great cycle of 52 years that combined the Tzolk'in and Hob calendars. Every 52 years, the same combination of day signs and numbers would return, marking the completion of one calendar round and the beginning of another. These moments were considered especially sacred, times when the cosmic energies would be renewed and the world would be symbolically reborn. Picture yourself participating in one of these calendar round ceremonies, held once every 52 years in the great plaza of a Maya city. The entire community would gather to witness the lighting of the new fire, a ceremony that marked the successful completion of one cosmic cycle and the beginning of another. Old pottery would be broken, houses would be cleaned, and debts would be forgiven. The Maya understood that time was not just about keeping track of days, but about creating opportunities for renewal and transformation. The Maya calendar system reveals something profound about their understanding of reality. They saw the universe as fundamentally mathematical, governed by numerical relationships that could be discovered and understood through careful observation and calculation. The same mathematical principles that governed the movements of celestial bodies also appeared in the patterns of their art, the proportions of their buildings, and the rhythms of their ceremonies. This mathematical understanding of time was not cold or mechanical, but deeply spiritual. The Maya believed that numbers were alive, that they had personalities and powers, that they could influence events and shape destinies. Each number from 1 to 13 had its own spiritual significance, its own divine associations, its own role to play in the cosmic drama. As you sit in this chamber of time, surrounded by the ancient calculations of Maya astronomers, you can feel the presence of this mathematical mysticism. The numbers carved in stone around you are not just abstractions, but living symbols that connect the human realm to the divine order that governs all existence. The Maya understanding of time offers us a different way of experiencing our own lives. Instead of rushing through our days, driven by the tyranny of schedules and deadlines, we might learn to feel the natural rhythms that flow through all existence. We might begin to sense the cycles within cycles, the patterns within patterns, that connect our personal stories to the larger story of the cosmos. Think about the natural rhythms that still govern your life, even in our modern world. The rhythm of your breathing, the beating of your heart, the cycle of sleeping and waking, the monthly phases of the moon, the yearly journey of the earth around the sun. These rhythms continue to flow through us, connecting us to the same cosmic patterns that the Maya celebrated in their calendars. The Maya calendar reminds us that every day is unique, every moment is sacred, every instant is a doorway into mystery. They understood that we are not separate from time, but part of it, temporary expressions of the eternal rhythms that flow through all existence. Our lives are like notes in a cosmic symphony, each one contributing to the greater harmony of the universe. As the night deepens around you, let yourself feel the gentle turning of the cosmic wheels. The silken calendar spinning like a prayer wheel, marking the sacred days with their gifts and challenges. The Hob calendar following the sun's eternal journey, tracking the seasons of growth and harvest, rest and renewal. The long count marking the vast cycles of creation and destruction, the breathing of the universe itself. You are part of this cosmic rhythm, connected to the same celestial patterns that inspired Maya astronomers to spend their lives watching the sky. Your heartbeat echoes the rhythm of the universe. Your breath follows the eternal cycles of expansion and contraction. Your dreams participate in the cosmic flow of creation and dissolution. The Maya calendar system teaches us that time is not our enemy, but our teacher. Each day brings its own lessons, its own opportunities for growth and understanding. Each cycle offers chances for renewal and transformation. Each moment is a gift, a sacred opportunity to participate consciously in the great dance of existence. Rest now in the knowledge that you are part of something magnificent and eternal. The same cosmic forces that moved the Maya to create their sophisticated calendars are moving through you right now, connecting you to the eternal rhythms that govern all life. You are not just a passive observer of time, but an active participant in the cosmic symphony. Sleep now, and let your dreams be guided by the ancient wisdom of the Maya timekeepers. Dream of cosmic wheels turning in perfect harmony, of calendars that transform the passage of days into sacred ritual, of time itself as a living river of energy and possibility. Let the rhythm of your breathing synchronize with the eternal rhythms of the universe. Feel yourself cradled by the same cosmic forces that the Maya celebrated in their calendars, the predictable cycles that bring order to chaos, the reliable patterns that connect all things in the web of existence. The stars above you are following the same paths that Maya astronomers tracked with such devotion and precision. The moon is waxing and waning according to the same cycles that they incorporated into their sacred calendars. The earth is turning on its axis and orbiting the sun according to the same celestial mechanics that they understood with such remarkable accuracy. You are part of this cosmic clockwork, this divine timepiece that measures not just minutes and hours, but the very heartbeat of creation itself. Rest peacefully in this knowledge, knowing that you are exactly where you need to be in the great flow of time, connected to the eternal rhythms that the Maya understood as the very breath of the gods. Picture yourself in a candlelit study, surrounded by towering shelves, filled with leather-bound books and scrolls. The air carries the scent of old paper and beeswax. and before you on a heavy wooden table lies an ancient Maya codex, one of only 4 bark paper books to survive the Spanish conquest. The pages are covered with elegant symbols that seem to dance in the flickering light. Stylized faces of gods and kings, intricate geometric patterns, graceful curves that flow like water across the page. These symbols once carried the voices of Maya scribes, recording their histories, their prophecies, their deepest understanding of the cosmos. But for centuries after the Spanish conquest, this beautiful script remained silent, its meaning lost to time, like echoes fading in an empty temple. The Maya writing system was one of the most sophisticated ever developed in the ancient Americas. Unlike simple picture writing, Maya hieroglyphs combined different types of symbols in complex ways. Some glyphs represented entire words or concepts, while others stood for individual sounds or syllables. This mixed system allowed Maya scribes to record not just basic information, but the full complexity of their spoken language, poetry and prayer, history and prophecy, scientific observations and mythological narratives. Imagine the Maya scribe who first painted these symbols, sitting cross-legged on a woven mat in a palace courtyard. Before him lies a strip of bark paper made from the inner bark of the fig tree, carefully prepared with a coating of lime plaster to create a smooth writing surface. In small ceramic pots around him are pigments made from minerals and plants, rich blacks from carbon, brilliant reds from cinnabar, deep blues from clay and indigo. His brush is made from a single hair plucked from a jaguar's tail, fine enough to create the delicate lines and curves that give Maya writing its distinctive element. As he works, he is not simply recording information, but creating art. Each glyph is carefully composed, balanced, beautiful. The Maya understood that writing was a sacred act, a way of making thoughts and words permanent, of speaking across the centuries to future generations. The Spanish conquistadors and missionaries who encountered Maya books in the 16th century saw them as works of the devil, filled with superstition and paganism that threatened their efforts to convert the Maya to Christianity. In 1562, Bishop Diego de Landa ordered a massive burning of Maya books in the town square of Indio. Thousands of codices went up in flames that day, an irreplaceable library of knowledge reduced to ashes and smoke. The loss was catastrophic. Imagine if all but 4 books had survived from our entire civilization. How much of our knowledge, our stories, our understanding of the world would be lost forever. This is what happened to Maya literature. Centuries of accumulated wisdom, poetry, history, and scientific observation were destroyed in a few hours of misguided But the Maya script didn't disappear entirely. It lived on in stone carvings on temple walls, in painted murals in palace chambers, in ceramic vessels buried with the dead. The symbols waited patiently for someone who could unlock their secrets and give voice to their silent messages. For over 300 years, Maya hieroglyphs remained an unsolved puzzle. European scholars who encountered them in the 18th and 19th centuries assumed they were purely pictographic, simple pictures that conveyed basic ideas but could unrecord the full complexity of spoken language. Some even believed that the Maya were incapable of true writing, that their symbols were merely decorative or magical rather than linguistic. This changed in the 1950s and 1960s, when a new generation of scholars began to approach Maya writing with fresh eyes and innovative methods. They were linguistic detectives, patient codebreakers, who understood that the key to unlocking the script lay not just in studying individual symbols, but in understanding how those symbols work together to create meaning. One of the most important breakthroughs came from a young Russian linguist named Yuri Nor, who had never set foot in the Maya world, but approached the script with the tools of structural linguistics. Working from photographs and drawings in his study in Lenin, Norisov recognized that Maya writing was not purely logographic, but included phonetic elements, symbols that represented sounds rather than meanings. Picture Norisov in his cramped apartment, surrounded by papers covered with Maya glyphs, smoking cigarette after cigarette as he worked late into the night. He had access to Bishop Delanda's manuscript, which included a supposed Maya alphabet that earlier scholars had dismissed as unreliable. But Norisov realized that Delanda had actually recorded something valuable, not an alphabet in the European sense, but a partial list of syllabic signs that could represent sounds in the Maya language. Using this insight, Norisov began to crack the code. He showed that many Maya glyphs were syllabic signs that could be combined to spell out words. A glyph that looked like a turkey's head, for example, didn't necessarily mean turkey. It might represent the sound ku, because that S, what the Maya word for turkey sounded like. This was revolutionary. It meant that Maya scribes could record not just concrete nouns and simple concepts, but abstract ideas, proper names, grammatical particles, all the subtle elements that make up a full writing system. The Maya script wasn't primitive picture writing, but a sophisticated system comparable to Egyptian hieroglyphs or Chinese characters. As more scholars joined the effort to decode Maya writing, progress accelerated. In Guatemala, archaeologist Tatiana Proskyryakov made another crucial breakthrough when she realized that many Maya inscriptions were just about gods and mythology, as earlier scholars had assumed but recorded actual historical events, the births, deaths, marriages, and military victories of real Maya rulers. Imagine the excitement when scholars realized they could actually read the names of Maya kings and queens who had lived over 1,000 years ago. Suddenly, the silent stones began to speak, telling stories of political intrigue, dynastic struggles, and personal triumphs and tragedies that brought the ancient Maya to life as real people rather than mysterious figures shrouded in legend. The Maya script revealed itself to be remarkably flexible and expressive. Scribes could write the same word in multiple ways, choosing different combinations of and syllabic signs depending on the aesthetic effect they wanted to create, or the space available on the writing surface. This flexibility made Maya writing challenging to decode, but it also made it beautiful, more like calligraphy than simple text. As you sit in this imaginary study, surrounded by the tools of the linguistic detectives who unlocked the Maya script, you can feel the presence of all the voices that were silent for so long but now speak again. Maya scribes left their signatures on many inscriptions, taking pride in their skill and artistry. We now know the names of individual scribes from over 1,000 years ago. Master calligraphers like Balama Vyekschilin and Aja Cowan. These scribes were not just recorders of information, but literary artists who played with language, created visual puns, and embedded multiple layers of meaning in their texts. They understood that writing was a form of magic, a way of making thoughts visible, of preserving memory across generations, of speaking to the gods and to posterity. The Maya script reveals a civilization that was deeply literate, where writing was not confined to a small priestly class, but was used by merchants to keep records, by artists to sign their works, by rulers to proclaim their achievements, and by ordinary people to record the events of their daily lives. Maya writing appeared on everything from monumental temple inscriptions to humble ceramic vessels, suggesting a society where literacy was valued and widespread. One of the most beautiful aspects of Maya writing is how it integrates text and image. Maya scribes didn't just write about their gods and rulers, they created portraits of them, showing their faces and costumes and regalia in exquisite detail. The boundary between writing and art disappeared, creating documents that were simultaneously informational and aesthetic, practical and sacred. Looking at a Maya inscription is like looking at a window into the past. The glyphs tell you what happened: a king's coronation, a military victory, the dedication of a temple. But the associated images show you how it happened, what the participants looked like, what they wore, how they held their bodies, what emotions showed on their faces. It's a complete multimedia record, as rich and detailed as a modern documentary. The decipherment of Maya writing has transformed our understanding of Maya civilization. Instead of the peaceful astronomer priests that earlier scholars imagined, we now know the Maya as a complex society of competing where skilled diplomats and fierce warriors ruled over elaborate courts filled with artists, scribes, merchants, and craftspeople. The Maya books that survived the conquest are like voices from a vanished world. The Dresden Codex contains detailed astronomical tables that allowed Maya priests to predict eclipses centuries in advance. The Madrid Codex includes ritual almanacs that guided agricultural activities and religious ceremonies. Each page is a masterpiece of both scientific knowledge and artistic achievement. Imagine the Maya scribe working on these books, carefully calculating the movements of Venus or the optimal dates for planting corn. He is simultaneously scientist and artist, mathematician and poet. His work will guide his community's activities for generations to come, helping them stay in harmony with the cosmic rhythms that govern all life. The Maya script teaches us about the power of writing to preserve and transmit knowledge across time. In a world without printing presses or digital storage, Maya scribes found ways to record their most important insights on materials that could last for centuries. They understood that knowledge is precious, that it must be carefully preserved and passed down to future generations. As the candles burn lower in your imaginary study, casting dancing shadows across the ancient texts, you can feel the presence of all the scholars who worked to bring the Maya script back to life. Like archaeologists excavating a buried city, they patiently uncovered layer after layer of meaning, gradually revealing the full complexity and beauty of Maya literary culture. Their work reminds us that no knowledge is ever truly lost, only hidden. The Maya scribes who painted their books and carved their stones trusted that someday someone would learn to read their words again. They were writing not just for their own time, but for all time, creating messages that could transcend the boundaries of language and culture. The decipherment of Maya writing is one of humanity's great intellectual achievements, comparable to the decoding of Egyptian hieroglyphs or the discovery of the structure of DNA. It required patience, creativity, collaboration, and the willingness to look at old problems in new ways. It shows us what human beings can accomplish when they work together across cultural and linguistic boundaries. The Maya script connects us to a literary tradition that stretches back over 2,000 years. In a world increasingly dominated by digital communication, there's something profoundly moving about these handmade books, where every glyph was painted with patient care, where every page represents hours of careful work by skilled artisans. These books remind us that writing is not just about conveying information, but about creating beauty, preserving memory, and connecting across time and space with other human beings. The Maya scribes who created these works understood that writing is one of humanity's most precious gifts. The ability to make thoughts permanent, to speak across the centuries, to leave traces of our understanding for future generations to discover and appreciate. Rest now in this quiet study, surrounded by the whispered voices of Maya scribes, whose words live on in stone and bark paper. Feel the presence of all the patient scholars who work to unlock their secrets, who refuse to let these voices remain silent forever. Sleep now and dream of ancient scribes working by lamplight, their brushes moving gracefully across bark paper as they record the wisdom of their time. Dream of patient scholars in modern libraries, gradually unlocking the secrets of forgotten scripts, bringing ancient voices back to life through dedication and insight. Let yourself be cradled by the knowledge that written words can transcend time itself, that thoughts recorded centuries ago can still speak to us today with clarity and beauty. The Maya scribes trusted that their words would find readers someday, and their trust was rewarded by the scholars who learned to read their elegant script. Dream of glyphs that flow like water across ancient pages, of symbols that combine sound and meaning in perfect harmony, of books that are simultaneously works of art and repositories of knowledge. Let the elegant curves of Maya writing guide you into peaceful sleep, knowing that you are connected to a great chain of human communication that stretches back to the very beginning of writing itself. The voices of the Maya scribes whisper softly now, their words flowing like a gentle stream through the corridors of time. Sleep peacefully, knowing that every word we speak or write connects us to this ancient tradition of human expression, this miracle of making thoughts visible and permanent across the vast expanses of time and space. Close your eyes and let your spirit become still, like sacred water reflecting the face of the divine. Feel yourself descending into that quiet place where earthly concerns fade away and deeper truths begin to emerge. Tonight, we enter the sacred heart of Maya civilization, where the boundary between mortal and divine dissolved like morning mist, and kings walked as living gods among their people. Picture yourself standing at the edge of a great plaza at dawn, when the first rays of sunlight strike the steps of a towering pyramid temple. The air is thick with copal incense, its sweet smoke rising like prayers toward the awakening sky. Before you, a procession begins to emerge from the palace complex. Figures dressed in costumes of such magnificence that they seem to have stepped directly from the realm of the gods. At the center of this divine pageant walks the Kawalaja, the divine lord, the Maya king whose very presence bridges the human and supernatural worlds. His headdress towers above him, adorned with the brilliant green feathers of the Quetzal bird, jade ornaments that catch the morning light like captured stars, and carved masks representing the faces of ancient deities. Every element of his costume tells a story, proclaims his divine authority, and connects him to the cosmic forces that govern all existence. The Maya understood kingship not as mere political authority, but as a sacred responsibility. Their rulers were not simply men who commanded armies and collected tribute. They were living conduits between the human realm and the world of the gods. Through elaborate bloodletting rituals, vision quests, and ceremonial performances, Maya kings opened doorways between dimensions, allowing divine energy to flow into the earthly realm. Imagine the awesome responsibility this placed upon a Maya ruler. He was expected to maintain the cosmic order through his actions, to ensure that the rains came in their proper season, that the crops grew abundantly, that the community remained in harmony with the supernatural forces that shaped all life. If drought came, if enemies attacked, if disaster struck, it might be seen as evidence that the king had failed in his sacred duties. The Maya king's day began before dawn with ritual purification. In the private chambers of his palace, attended by priest advisors and noble courtiers, he would prepare his body and spirit for the day's sacred duties. Every meal was a ceremonial act, every public appearance a religious performance, every decision a consultation with the divine. The gods of the Maya were not distant, abstract deities dwelling in some far-off heaven. They were immediate, present, actively involved in the daily life of the community. The Maya pantheon was vast and complex, hundreds of deities, each with their own personalities, powers, and domains of influence. Some were benevolent creators and nurturers, others were fierce warriors and destroyers, and many embodied the complex duality that the Maya saw at the heart of all existence. At the apex of this divine hierarchy stood Itzamna, the creator god, often depicted as an aged man with a prominent nose and toothless mouth. He was the inventor of writing, the patron of learning, the divine architect who designed the cosmos itself. In Maya creation mythology, Itzamna participated in the creation and destruction of previous worlds, always working to bring forth a universe where life could flourish. Close your eyes and envision Chak, the rain god, whose presence was essential for agricultural success in the often dry Maya lands. With his distinctive curved nose and fanged teeth, Chak controlled the storms and rainfall that meant the difference between abundance and famine. Maya ceremonies often centered around elaborate rituals, designed to honor Chak and ensure his continued favor. Perhaps the most beloved figures in Maya mythology were the hero twins, Hunahpu and Xbalanque, whose adventures are recorded in the sacred book known as the Palpulva. These divine brothers journeyed to the underworld, defeated the lords of death through wit and courage, and ultimately transformed into the sun and moon, bringing light to the world. Their story became a template for Maya kingship. Rulers were expected to follow the example of the hero twins, facing challenges with wisdom and bravery. The Maya underworld, called Shib, was not a place of eternal punishment but a complex realm where souls journeyed after death, facing trials and tests before achieving transformation and renewal. Maya kings regularly communicated with the spirits of their ancestors, who dwelt in this underworld realm, seeking guidance and validation for their earthly decisions. In the quiet of this sacred dawn, you can almost see the elaborate rituals through which Maya rulers maintained their connection to the divine realm. Picture the king standing atop his pyramid temple, a jade-tipped stingray spine in his hand, preparing to offer his blood to the gods. This was not mere symbolism. The Maya believed that royal blood contained special power, that it could nourish the gods and maintain the cosmic balance that kept the world in order. The bloodletting ceremonies were moments of profound spiritual intensity. As the king pierced his tongue or other parts of his body, allowing his blood to drip onto bark paper that would later be burned as an offering, he entered an altered state of consciousness. In this sacred trance, induced by pain, ritual preparation, and the smoke of burning copal incense, the ruler could communicate directly with gods and ancestors. Maya queens also participated in these sacred bloodletting rituals, often shown in ancient art drawing ropes studded with thorns through their tongues. These royal women were not merely decorative consorts, but active participants in the spiritual life of the kingdom. Powerful figures who could channel divine energy and communicate with supernatural beings. The royal court was itself a reflection of the divine realm, with nobles and courtiers playing roles that paralleled the positions of gods and spirits in the supernatural hierarchy. Court ceremonies followed elaborate protocols that had been established by the gods themselves, ensuring that earthly activities remained in harmony with cosmic patterns. Maya mythology tells us that the current world, the one we live in now, is the fifth creation. The previous four worlds were each destroyed when they failed to meet the gods' expectations. The first humans were made of mud, but they were too soft and dissolved in the rain. The second were carved from wood, but they lacked souls and were destroyed by a great flood. Only in the fifth creation, when humans were formed from corn dough, did the gods achieve their goal of creating beings who could properly worship and nourish them. This creation story placed enormous significance on corn, which the Maya saw not just as their primary food crop, but as the very substance from which they were made. Every kernel of corn was sacred. Every meal was a communion with the divine. Maya kings often wore corn god masks during agricultural ceremonies, identifying themselves with this life-giving deity and ensuring the continued fertility of the land. The Maya calendar was intimately connected to these religious beliefs. Each day was ruled by specific gods. Each month had its own divine patron, and major ceremonies were timed to coincide with astronomical events that marked the movements of deities across the sky. The appearance of Venus as the morning star, for example, was associated with the war god and often signaled appropriate times for military campaigns. In the shadows of the Pyramid Temple, you can almost see the elaborate costumes and masks that transformed Maya rulers into living gods during public ceremonies. These were not mere theatrical props, but sacred regalia believed to contain actual divine power. When a king donned the mask of the maize god, he didn't just represent that deity, he became that deity, allowing the god's power to flow through him into the human realm. The Maya artistic tradition was inseparable from their religious beliefs. Every mural, every sculpture, every piece of pottery was designed not just to be beautiful but to serve religious and political purposes. Art was a way of making the invisible visible, of giving form to the gods and spirits that shaped Maya life. Royal portraits showed kings in elaborate supernatural costumes, surrounded by hieroglyphic texts that recorded their divine genealogies and supernatural achievements. These were not just historical records, but sacred documents that validated the ruler, authority, and documented his connections to the divine realm. The Maya understanding of divine kingship created a society where political power was always tempered by spiritual responsibility. A king might command vast armies and control enormous wealth, but he was also accountable to the gods for his actions. This accountability was not abstract. It was believed to manifest in very concrete ways through natural disasters, military defeats, or other calamities that could befall a kingdom whose ruler had failed in his sacred duties. This system created a unique form of governance where temporal power was always balanced by spiritual obligations. Maya kings were expected to be warriors and administrators, but they were also required to be astronomers, mathematicians, and ritual specialists. They needed to understand the complex movements of celestial bodies, the intricate relationships between different gods, and the proper procedures for maintaining cosmic harmony. The palaces where Maya rulers lived were designed to reflect this dual nature of royal authority. They contained audience halls for receiving tribute and conducting state business, but they also included private chambers for ritual purification, observatories for astronomical observation, and sacred spaces for communicating with gods and ancestors. As the sun rises higher over the ancient plaza, illuminating the carved facades of temples and palaces, you can feel the presence of this sacred worldview that shaped every aspect of Maya life. The boundary between sacred and secular didn't exist. Every action, every decision, every moment was imbued with spiritual significance. Maya children grew up surrounded by this understanding of divine presence in daily life. They learned that the gods were not remote figures but active participants in their community, beings who could be honored, consulted, and even bargained with through proper ritual procedures. This created a society where people felt themselves to be part of a larger cosmic drama, where their individual lives had meaning within the great story of creation and renewal. The festivals and ceremonies that marked the Maya ritual calendar were community-wide, celebrations that brought together people from all levels of society, nobles and commoners, priests and farmers, artisans and merchants all participated in elaborate pageants that reenacted mythological events and renewed the bonds between the human and divine realms. These ceremonies often lasted for days, with dancing, music, theatrical performances, and ritual offerings that transformed the entire city into a sacred space. The plazas filled with the smoke of incense and the sound of drums, flutes, and rattles. Participants wore elaborate costumes and masks, temporarily becoming the gods and spirits they represented. Through these rituals, the Maya community renewed its relationship with the divine powers that governed their world. They offered thanks for past blessings, requested continued favor, and reaffirmed their commitment to maintaining the cosmic order through their actions and devotion. The Maya belief in divine kingship created a society where leadership was seen as service to the gods, to the ancestors, and to the cosmic principles that maintain universal harmony. This understanding placed limits on royal power and created expectations that rulers would use their authority for the benefit of their people and in accordance with divine will. Rest now in this sacred plaza, surrounded by the gentle presence of gods and ancestors who continue to watch over the Maya people. Feel the peace that comes from understanding your place in the great cosmic order, your connection to the divine forces that flow through all existence. Sleep peacefully, knowing that you too are part of this great story. Began with the creation of the world and continues through every generation. Let yourself be cradled by the same cosmic forces that the Maya honored in their ceremonies, the eternal cycles of death and rebirth. destruction, and creation that keep the universe in constant renewal. Dream of kings who walked as living gods among their people, of ceremonies that opened doorways between worlds, of communities united in their understanding of the sacred nature of existence. Dream of temples where incense, smoke carried prayers to the heavens, of plazas where people gathered to celebrate their connection to the divine. Let the ancient wisdom of Maya spirituality guide you into peaceful sleep, knowing that the same cosmic forces that moved their kings and shaped their ceremonies are still flowing through the world today, connecting all things in the great web of sacred existence. The gods smile upon you as you rest, the ancestors whisper their blessings, and the eternal cycles of the cosmos continue their gentle dance around your sleeping form. Sleep well, divine child, part of the same sacred creation that the Maya honored with such devotion and understood with such profound wisdom. It is the year 900 CE, and something profound is happening across the Maya world. In the great cities that have thrived for over 1,000 years, the sounds of daily life are growing quieter. The rhythmic chanting from temple tops becomes less frequent. The bustling marketplaces slowly empty. The scribes who once carved elaborate hieroglyphs into stone monuments are laying down their tools for the final time. This is not the story of a single catastrophic event, but rather the slow, haunting fade of one of the world's most sophisticated civilizations. Like watching the final rays of sunlight disappear behind ancient pyramids, the collapse of the classic Maya period unfolds gradually, mysteriously, leaving behind questions that echo through the jungle corridors even today. The height before the fall. To understand the mystery of the Maya collapse, we must first picture these cities at their magnificent peak. Imagine standing at the base of the Great Pyramid at Tikal. As dawn breaks over the rainforest, the air is thick with morning mist, and as the sun climbs higher, the jungle awakens with the calls of howler monkeys and the rustle of countless unseen creatures. But here, rising above the forest canopy, is something even more remarkable than nature itself. Tikal stretches before you like a dream made of limestone and jade. Temple pyramids pierce the sky, some reaching heights of over 200 feet, their steep steps disappearing into the clouds that gather around their peaks. Between these monuments, a complex network of plazas, palaces, and residential compounds spreads across the landscape, connected by raised stone causeways that cut straight lines through the irregular jungle terrain. The population of Tikal at its height may have reached 100,000 people or more, a number that challenges our very understanding of what was possible in the ancient world. These weren't simple farmers scratching out a living in the wilderness. They were astronomers who could predict eclipses centuries in advance, mathematicians who independently invented the concept of zero, architects who built structures that have stood for over a millennium without modern tools or techniques. From the tallest temples, you could see smoke rising from cooking fires across dozens of other settlements scattered throughout the forest. Each major city was like a bright star in a constellation of Maya civilization, connected by trade routes, political alliances, and shared cultural traditions that stretched from the Yucatan Peninsula to the highlands of Guatemala. The scribes in these cities were busy documenting everything: royal births, military victories, astronomical observations, and religious ceremonies. They carved their elegant hieroglyphs into stone stelae that stood like ancient billboards, proclaiming the achievements of their kings to anyone who could read their sophisticated writing system. The very stones seemed to pulse with life and meaning. And then, gradually, it all began to change. The first signs of silence, the collapse, didn't happen overnight. Instead, it crept across the Maya world like shadows lengthening at the end of a long day. The first signs were subtle, easy to miss unless you knew what to look for. In the archaeological record, we see these early warning signs preserved like pressed flowers in the pages of an ancient book. Around 800 CE, the number of dated monuments being erected in major cities begins to decline. These stelae, which had been raised regularly to commemorate important events and royal anniversaries, become less frequent. It's as if the cities were slowly losing their voice, their desire to speak to future generations about their achievements. Picture a scribe in Palenque, perhaps one of the last to work in that magnificent city. He approaches a partially carved stela in the palace courtyard, his tools ready to complete an inscription that chronicles his king's latest victory. But something holds him back. Perhaps resources are scarce, or the victory he was meant to commemorate has turned to defeat. Perhaps the very king who commissioned the work is no longer in power. The stela remains unfinished, its partial message frozen in time like a sentence that will never reach its conclusion. In what is now Honduras, construction projects that had continued for centuries suddenly cease. Half-built temples stand like abandoned dreams, their stones carefully cut and waiting for placement. But the hands that would have lifted them into place have moved on to other concerns. Or perhaps are no longer there at all. The great ball courts, where ritual games have been played for religious and political purposes, begin to fall into disrepair. Weeds push up through the carefully fitted stone floors. The carved markers that once indicated the cosmic significance of these games become weathered and forgotten. Even more telling are the changes in the smaller details of daily life. Pottery styles that had remained consistent for centuries begin to show signs of decline in quality and complexity. The intricate polychrome ceramics that graced the tables of Maya nobility give way to simpler, more utilitarian wares. It's as if the civilization was slowly forgetting how to be magnificent. Trade routes that had carried exotic goods across hundreds of miles, obsidian from Guatemala, jade from the Motagua Valley, shells from both the Pacific and Atlantic coasts, begin to contract. Cities that had thrived on their position along these commercial networks find themselves increasingly isolated, cut off from the resources and ideas that had once flowed through them like lifeblood. Theories in the mist what could cause such a profound transformation. For over a century, archaeologists and historians have pondered this question, each new discovery adding another piece to an enormous and complex puzzle. Like detectives working a case that's over 1,000 years cold, they've followed every clue, examined every piece of evidence, and proposed theories that range from the plausible to the dramatic. Let us explore these theories not as academic arguments, but as possible stories, each one a different way. The final chapters of the classic Maya period might have unfolded. The Great Drought Theory imagine, if you will, the gradual change of seasons. In the Maya world, the rhythm of wet and dry seasons was more than just weather. It was the heartbeat of civilization itself. The rains came each year like clockwork, filling the reservoirs and water storage systems that the Maya had engineered with such care. These weren't simple rain collectors, but sophisticated networks of channels, tanks, and underground chambers that could sustain large populations through the dry months. But what if the rains began to fail? Climate scientists studying ancient weather patterns have found evidence of a severe drought that affected much of Mesoamerica between 800 and 1000 CE. This wasn't a drought that lasted just 1 or 2 seasons, but a prolonged dry period that could have stretched for decades. Imagine the Maya kings standing on their temple platforms, performing the rituals that had always brought the rains, watching the sky hopefully as another cloudless day dawned over their increasingly desperate cities. In this scenario, the collapse becomes a slow-motion tragedy of environmental change. Picture the great reservoirs of Tikal, once full to the brim with precious water, slowly revealing their stone-lined bottoms as the water level drops year after year. The canals that once carried fresh water throughout the city become dry channels filled only with dust and fallen leaves. Farmers who had cultivated the same fields for generations watch their crops wither. The elaborate raised field systems in the wetlands, an agricultural innovation that had supported large populations for centuries, become useless as the water table drops below the reach of plant roots. Families who had never known hunger begin to understand what it means to go without. As the drought persists, social tensions that had been manageable during times of plenty begin to strain the fabric of Maya society. Disputes over water rights become matters of life and death. Cities that had coexisted peacefully for generations begin to eye each other's diminishing resources with new desperation. The warfare theory, perhaps the collapse was more violent, more immediate in its impact. Archaeological evidence from the terminal classic period shows increasing signs of conflict across the Maya region. Defensive walls appear around cities that had never needed them before. Settlements are suddenly abandoned with clear signs of burning and destruction. Royal palaces show evidence of being systematically dismantled, as if conquering armies had taken special care to erase the symbols of their enemies' power. Picture the Maya world as a complex web of alliances and rivalries, with each major city commanding its own network of smaller settlements and agricultural communities. For centuries, these relationships had been managed through diplomacy, royal marriages, tribute payments, and occasional small-scale conflicts that served more to demonstrate power than to destroy enemies completely. But as resources became scarce, whether due to drought, overpopulation, or other environmental pressures, these traditional methods of conflict resolution may have broken down. What had once been manageable rivalries could have escalated into devastating wars of survival. Imagine armies moving through the jungle along the ancient causeways, not to conduct limited campaigns for tribute or prestige, but to seize the very resources needed for survival. Cities that had invested centuries in monumental architecture and artistic achievement suddenly find themselves needing to divert all their energy toward defense and conquest. In this scenario, the silence that fell over the Maya cities was the silence of defeat, abandonment, and refugees fleeing to safer territories. The great pyramids and palaces, built to last forever, become empty monuments to a world that destroyed itself through conflict. The environmental collapse theory, there is another possibility, quieter but perhaps more devastating than warfare. The idea that the Maya civilization grew too successful for its own good. Picture the region around the great cities not as pristine wilderness, but as a carefully managed landscape that had been shaped by human hands for over 1,000 years. The Maya had transformed the tropical forest into something like a vast garden. They had terraced hillsides for agriculture, drained swamps to create productive farmland, and developed sophisticated systems for managing water and soil. In many areas, they had achieved what modern ecologists call carrying capacity, the maximum population that an environment can sustain indefinitely. But what happens when that delicate balance is disrupted? Imagine the forests around major Maya cities, once thick with mahogany, cecropia, and countless other tropical species, gradually thinning as the demand for construction, timber, fuel, and farmland increased with the growing population. The Maya needed enormous amounts of wood not just for building, but for burning limestone to create the plaster that covered their monuments and buildings. Each pyramid, each palace, each elaborate stucco decoration represented thousands of trees converted to lime, plastered through intensive burning. As the forests retreated, the local climate began to change. Without the canopy cover, rainfall patterns shifted. Soil erosion increased, washing away the thin tropical soils that had supported agriculture for centuries. The very success of Maya civilization, its growing population, its magnificent cities, its impressive monuments, may have set in motion environmental changes that made that success unsustainable. Picture a Maya farmer working the same terrace fields that his ancestors had cultivated for 20 generations, watching the soil grow thinner each year, seeing the crop yields decline despite his best efforts. The knowledge and techniques that had sustained his family for centuries were no longer enough. The land itself was changing, becoming less able to support the population it had once nourished. The social revolution theory, perhaps the collapse came not from external pressures, but from internal transformation, a fundamental change in how Maya society understood itself and organized its priorities. For centuries, Maya civilization had been built around the concept of divine kingship, with elaborate royal courts supported by the labor and tribute of common people who believed their rulers were literally descended from the gods. But what if that belief began to fade? Imagine the common people of a great Maya city, perhaps or Palenque, gradually losing faith in the divine nature of their rulers. Perhaps the king's claims to control the rains and ensure abundant harvests were called into question by drought and crop failure. Perhaps the elaborate ceremonies and massive construction projects began to seem like wasteful displays rather than necessary religious obligations. In this scenario, the collapse represents a kind of social revolution, not necessarily violent, but fundamental in its transformation of Maya society. Picture the great plazas and temple complexes, once filled with crowds gathered for royal ceremonies, slowly emptying as people redirect their energy toward more immediate concerns, feeding their families, maintaining their homes, dealing with the practical challenges of daily life. The kings and nobles, their authority undermined, might have found themselves unable to command the resources needed to maintain their elaborate lifestyle. Without massive labor forces to support construction projects, and without the tribute that had funded their courts, the royal centers would have withered away like flowers cut from their roots. This theory suggests that the Maya people did undisappear. They simply reorganized their society along different lines, abandoning the costly overhead of divine kingship in favor of more sustainable community-based ways of life. The long twilight, whatever combination of factors caused the collapse, the process itself unfolded like a slow sunset across the Maya world. It wasn't uniform. Some cities fell earlier than others, some managed to maintain reduced populations for decades or even centuries after their peak, and some areas saw resurgence and renewal, even as others were being abandoned to the jungle. Picture Tikal in the year 850 CE, perhaps 50 years after its peak. The Great Pyramids still dominate the landscape, their stone faces as imposing as ever, but something has changed in the spaces between them. Where once there were bustling markets and crowded residential compounds, now there are empty courtyards where grass grows between the stones. Some of the smaller temples show signs of neglect. Their roofs have collapsed. Their carved decorations are weathering away without regular maintenance. The population of the city has dropped by half, then 3/4, then more. Those who remain cluster around the central core, maintaining what they can of the old ways, while adapting to new realities. Perhaps they no longer carve elaborate hieroglyphic inscriptions, but they still remember how to read the old texts. Perhaps they no longer build new pyramids, but they still climb the old ones to observe the movements of the planets and stars. In some cities, the end came more suddenly. Archaeological evidence suggests that Das Pilas, once a powerful center in the region, was abandoned so quickly that valuable jade ornaments and ceramic vessels were left behind in royal tombs and palace rooms. It's as if the inhabitants simply walked away one day, taking only what they could carry. But even in sudden abandonment, there are signs of deliberate action rather than panic. Tombs were carefully sealed. Important religious objects were sometimes buried or hidden away, as if their owners hoped to return for them someday. Buildings were dismantled in an orderly fashion, with valuable carved stones and architectural elements removed for use elsewhere. This suggests that the collapse, even when it was rapid, was managed by people who understood what was happening and tried to preserve what they could of their cultural heritage for future generations. The jungle reclaims its own in the decades following abandonment. The tropical forest began the slow process of reclaiming the Maya cities. This wasn't destruction in the violent sense, but rather a gentle, inexorable transformation that turned monuments back into landscape. Picture a great pyramid, perhaps at Yaxmal or El Mirador, standing empty in the forest. At first, it looks much as it did when people still climbed its steps for ceremonies and royal appearances. The limestone blocks fit together with precision. The plaster surfaces still show traces of the bright red paint that once made them visible for miles through the jungle canopy. But as the years pass without human maintenance, small changes begin to accumulate. Seeds blown by the wind or carried by birds find purchase in tiny cracks between stones. Roots, no thicker than threads, at first, begin to work their way into these openings. Rain pools in corners and carved details, creating perfect growing conditions for moss and small plants. The tropical climate, which the Maya had learned to work with so successfully, now works against their creations. The alternating wet and dry seasons create cycles of expansion and contraction that gradually loosen even the most carefully fitted stones. Humidity encourages the growth of lichens and other organisms that slowly dissolve limestone through biological processes. Tree roots, following the path of least resistance, snake along the bases of walls and through ancient drainage systems. As these roots grow thicker, they develop tremendous strength, capable of shifting massive stone blocks with their gradual but persistent pressure. What had taken teams of workers years to construct could be slowly dismantled by a single tree over the course of decades. But this reclamation by the forest wasn't entirely destructive. In many cases, the jungle acted as a protective blanket, preserving Maya structures better than exposure to wind and weather might have done. The trees that grew over buried buildings helped to hold them in place, preventing collapse while also hiding them from potential vandals or treasure hunters. Under this green blanket, the Maya cities entered a kind of suspended animation. Hieroglyphic inscriptions remained crisp and readable beneath protective layers of moss and forest debris. Painted murals, sealed away from light and air, maintained their colors for centuries. Carved decorations, cushioned by accumulated leaf litter and protected by overhanging branches, waited in perfect preservation for the archaeologists who would eventually rediscover them. Echoes and survivors, the collapse of the great Maya centers didn't mean the end of Maya civilization itself. As the classic period cities fell silent, Maya life continued in different forms and different places. Some populations migrated northward to the Yucatan, where cities like Chichen Itza and later Miopan would experience their own periods of greatness. Others retreated to highland areas or smaller settlements, where they could maintain their cultural traditions on a more modest scale. Imagine small groups of Maya families, descendants of the populations that had once filled the great cities, maintaining their connections to the abandoned centers through memory and occasional pilgrimage. They would return to the empty plazas and overgrown temples, not as permanent residents, but as visitors honoring their ancestors and maintaining connections to sacred places. These communities carried with them the essential elements of Maya culture: the calendar system, the writing, the religious beliefs, the agricultural knowledge, and the sophisticated understanding of astronomy that had made their civilization great. They simplified and adapted these traditions to suit their new circumstances, but they didn't abandon them. Picture an elderly Maya priest in a small highland community, perhaps in the 12th or 13th century, teaching a young student to calculate calendar correlations using the same mathematical principles that had once been employed by the astronomers of Palenque. And the great observatory temples are now covered by jungle, but the knowledge they represented lives on in the careful instruction passing from one generation to the next. In this way, the collapse of the classic Maya cities was not an ending, but a transformation. A change from one form of civilization to another, smaller in scale but unbroken in its essential continuity. The great cities fell silent, but the people who had created them carried their wisdom into new chapters of their long cultural story. The mystery remains even today, after more than a century of archaeological investigation and scholarly analysis. The collapse of the classic Maya civilization remains one of the great puzzles of human history. Each new discovery adds details to our understanding, but also reveals new questions and complexities that challenge our assumptions about what happened during those crucial centuries. Perhaps this is as it should be. The Maya collapse wasn't a simple event with a single cause and a clear narrative. It was a complex transformation involving millions of people across dozens of major cities and hundreds of smaller communities, playing out over generations in response to multiple environmental, social, and political pressures, like the jungle itself, with its intricate web of relationships between countless species of plants and animals. The Maya civilization was an ecosystem of human culture, complex, interconnected, and ultimately vulnerable to changes that disrupted its delicate balance. The mystery of the collapse is really the mystery of civilization itself. How human societies grow and flourish, how they adapt to challenges and changes, and how they transform or disappear when the conditions that created them no longer exist. In studying the Maya collapse, we not just learning about ancient history, we re-exploring fundamental questions about the relationship between human societies and the environments that sustain them. Sleeping among the ruins. As you drift toward sleep tonight, let your mind wander through the quiet ruins of the great Maya cities. Picture yourself walking along an ancient causeway, now soft with moss and fallen leaves, leading toward a pyramid that rises like a green hill against the starlit sky. The sounds of the jungle surround you, the gentle whisper of wind through branches, the distant call of a night bird, the rustle of small creatures moving through the undergrowth. You climb the pyramid steps slowly, feeling the worn limestone beneath your feet, each step taking you higher above the forest canopy. At the top, you find yourself in a small temple chamber, its walls still bearing traces of ancient murals, painted in colors that seem to glow faintly in the darkness. Here, surrounded by the accumulated silence of centuries, you can almost hear the echoes of the voices that once filled this space. The chanting of priests, the pronouncements of kings, the whispered prayers of common people seeking guidance from their gods. These voices haven't vanished entirely. They've simply become part of the larger chorus of the forest, blending with the sounds of wind and water and growing things. The mystery of the Maya collapse is something to be solved. The human achievements and of the resilience of human culture continues and adapts even when its most magnificent expressions fade away. As sleep overtakes, you let yourself become part of this ancient landscape, resting peacefully among the ruins, and the growing jungle connected to the long story of human civilization that stretches back through the centuries and forward into the unknown future. The pyramids stand silent in the darkness, keeping their secrets, while the forest breathes gently around them. And the stars wheel overhead in patterns the Maya learned to read like a book written across the sky. The great puzzle remains unsolved, and perhaps that's exactly as it should be. Some mysteries are more beautiful for remaining mysterious. Some stories more powerful for leaving their endings open to imagination and wonder. Sleeping among the ruins as you drift toward sleep tonight, let your mind wander through the quiet ruins of the great Maya cities. Picture yourself walking along an ancient causeway, now soft with moss and fallen leaves, leading toward a pyramid that rises like a green hill against the starlit sky. The sounds of the jungle surround you, the gentle whisper of wind through branches, the distant call of a night bird, the rustle of small creatures moving through the undergrowth. You climb the pyramid steps slowly, feeling the worn limestone beneath your feet, each step taking you higher above the forest canopy. At the top, you find yourself in a small temple chamber, its walls still bearing traces of ancient murals painted in colors that seem to glow faintly in the darkness. Here, surrounded by the accumulated silence of centuries, you can almost hear the echoes of the voices that once filled this space. The chanting of priests, the pronouncements of kings, the whispered prayers of common people seeking guidance from their gods. These voices haven't vanished entirely. They've simply become part of the larger chorus of the forest, blending with the sounds of wind and water and growing things. The mystery of the Maya collapse isn't something to be solved, but something to be contemplated. A reminder of the human achievements and of the resilience of human culture that continues and adapts, even when its most magnificent expressions fade away. As sleep overtakes you, let yourself become part of this ancient landscape, resting peacefully among the ruins and the growing jungle, connected to the long story of human civilization that stretches back through the centuries and forward into the unknown future. The pyramids stand silent in the darkness, keeping their secrets, while the forest breathes gently around them. And the stars wheel overhead in patterns the Maya learned to read like a book written across the sky. The great puzzle remains unsolved, and perhaps that's exactly as it should be. Some mysteries are more beautiful for remaining mysterious. Some stories more powerful for leaving their endings open to imagination and wonder. Rest now, and dream of temples emerging from morning mist, of voices calling across the centuries, of civilizations that rise and fall like the turning of seasons, leaving behind only questions and beauty and the eternal mystery of what it means to be human in a world that is always changing, always becoming something new. Tonight, we complete our journey through the mysteries of the Maya civilization. But this isn't really an ending at all. It is the beginning of understanding that some stories never truly end. They simply transform and continue in new ways, like rivers that seem to disappear underground only to emerge again miles downstream, still flowing toward the sea. Close your eyes and let your mind settle into a peaceful state as we explore the most beautiful truth about the Maya. They were never really lost. While the great cities fell silent and the jungle reclaimed the pyramids, the people themselves, the keepers of ancient wisdom, the inheritors of mathematical genius, the descendants of pyramid builders, continued their journey through time, carrying forward a living culture that spans over 2,000 years. Tonight we'll discover how the Maya story didn't end with abandoned cities but continues in the voices of children, learning their ancestral languages. In the hands of weavers creating patterns that echo ancient codices, and the eyes of farmers who still read the stars to know when to plant their corn. This is a story of resilience, of cultural continuity, of the remarkable ability of human communities to preserve what matters most, even as the world changes around them. So settle back, breathe deeply, and let us walk together through the living landscape of Maya culture, where the past and present interweave like the roots of ceiba trees, deep and strong and eternal. The persistence of memory. Imagine, if you will, a grandmother in a small village in highland Guatemala, sitting in the golden light of late afternoon with her granddaughter on her lap. The child is perhaps 5 years old, her dark eyes bright with curiosity as her grandmother speaks to her in Quechua, one of the Maya languages that has been spoken in these mountains for over 1,000 years. The grandmother's hands move as she talks, weaving invisible patterns in the air that mirror the intricate designs on the huipil she wears, a traditional blouse, whose geometric patterns carry meanings that stretch back to the time when scribes were still carving hieroglyphs on stone monuments in distant Tickle. She doesn't know that her clothing preserves ancient symbols, doesn't think of herself as a guardian of archaeological treasures. She simply knows that this is how her grandmother dressed, and her grandmother's grandmother, and all the women in her family line stretching back into the mists of time. The words she speaks to her granddaughter are not museum pieces or academic curiosities. They are living language, flowing naturally from her lips, with the same ease that water flows from a mountain spring. When she names the colors of her weaving racks for green, sack for white, cane for yellow, she uses words that were old when the pyramids of Palenque were new. When she tells stories of the creation of the world, of the hero twins who descended into the underworld, of the great ceiba tree that connects earth and sky, she passes on narratives that were already ancient when Spanish conquistadors first arrived in the Americas. This is the first and most fundamental truth about the Maya today. They never went anywhere. The great cities may have been abandoned. The hieroglyphic writing system may have fallen out of use. The elaborate royal courts may have vanished. But the people themselves continued, carrying forward the essential elements of their culture through an unbroken chain of generations. Today, approximately 7 million people across Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador identify as Maya. They speak over 30 distinct Maya languages, each one a living repository of ancient knowledge and contemporary experience. From the Yucatec Maya of Mexico's Caribbean coast to the Maya of the Guatemalan highlands, from the Quetzalcoatl communities of Chiapas to the Mopan Maya of Belize, each group maintains its own particular traditions while sharing in the larger cultural heritage that connects them all. The weavers of time in the highlands of Guatemala, in villages perched on mountain slopes where morning mist clings to terraced fields of corn and beans, Maya women continue one of the world's oldest unbroken textile traditions. Picture a woman named Ixchel, a name that honors the ancient Maya goddess of weaving, childbirth, and the moon. As she sets up her backstrap loom in the courtyard of her home, the loom itself is a masterpiece of simplicity and functionality, virtually unchanged from those used by her ancestors 1,000 years ago. It consists of a series of wooden sticks and heddles that she manipulates with her body, using her own posture and movement to create the tension needed to weave intricate patterns. The loom becomes an extension of her body, responding to the subtle shifts of her posture as she works. But this is more than just textile production. It's a form of meditation, of prayer, of connection to ancestral wisdom. The patterns she creates are not arbitrary decorations, but encoded messages, symbolic representations of Maya cosmology and spiritual beliefs. The diamond shapes might represent the 4 directions of the universe. The zigzag lines could symbolize the path of the sun across the sky. The stylized birds and flowers might carry prayers for fertility and abundance. As Ixchel works, she hums softly to herself, sometimes singing traditional songs that her grandmother taught her. The rhythm of her weaving mechas, the rhythm of her breathing, creating a peaceful, meditative state that allows her mind to wander through memories and dreams. In this state, she feels connected not just to her immediate family, but to all the women who came before her, all who sat at their looms and created beauty from simple threads. The colors she uses: deep indigo blues, rich cochineal reds, brilliant yellows from annatto seeds, are extracted from plants and insects using techniques that have been refined over centuries. She knows which plants to gather and when, how to prepare the dyes, how to achieve the exact shade she wants. This knowledge wasn't learned from books or classes, but absorbed gradually through years of watching, helping, and practicing alongside her mother and aunts. When she finishes a hupil, it's not just a piece of clothing, but a wearable work of art that proclaims her identity, her village, her family history, and her connection to the sacred patterns of Maya cosmology. Each hupil is unique, reflecting the individual creativity of its maker, while remaining faithful to traditions that stretch back to the classic period. In marketplaces throughout Guatemala, these textiles create a living museum of Maya culture. Women from different villages can identify each other's origins by the patterns they wear, creating a visual language that speaks of community identity and cultural continuity. The market itself becomes a place where ancient traditions meet contemporary life, where the wisdom of the past finds expression in the present. Keepers of the ancient calendar. Deep in the mountains of Guatemala, in a region where Spanish colonial influence never fully penetrated, Maya daykeepers continue to practice the ancient art of calendar keeping and divination. These men and women, known as AJQIJ, in Cache Maya, are the living links to the sophisticated astronomical and mathematical knowledge that once flourished in the great cities of the classic period. Picture Don Carlos, an elderly daykeeper who lives in a small village overlooking lake. His day begins before dawn, when he climbs to a sacred site on the hillside above his home, a place where his ancestors have been conducting ceremonies for countless generations. The site is modest compared to the great temple complexes of antiquity, consisting of a simple altar made of arranged stones, but it pulses with the same sacred energy that once filled the ceremonial centers of Tikal and Don Carlos carries with him a small bag containing red beans and crystals, tools for divination that connect him to the 260-day sacred calendar that has been running continuously for over 2,000 years. This calendar, known as the Tucan, continues to tick forward with the same precision that it did when Maya astronomers were calculating the movements of Venus from the top of the Caracal Observatory at Chichen Itza. As the sun rises over the lake, painting the volcanic peaks in shades of gold and pink, Don Carlos begins his daily ritual. He counts out the beans and crystals, their patterns revealing the energies and influences that will shape the day ahead. Each day has its own character, its own spiritual significance, its own opportunities and challenges. The day 8 Ajmak might be favorable for healing ceremonies, while 3 IQ could be ideal for communication and travel. This isn't fortune-telling in the popular sense, but rather a sophisticated system for understanding the rhythms of time and human experience. The Maya calendar recognizes that time is not a simple linear progression, but a complex weaving of cycles within cycles, each one influencing human affairs in subtle but important ways. Don Carlos learned this knowledge not from books, but from his grandfather, who learned it from his grandfather, in an unbroken chain of transmission that stretches back to the classic period. The calculations he performs in his head, the correlations he makes between different calendar systems, the astronomical observations he incorporates into his practice, all of this represents the continuation of mathematical and scientific traditions that were already ancient when Europe was emerging from the Dark Ages. But this knowledge isn't preserved merely as a historical curiosity. It remains vibrantly alive, actively consulted by community members who seek guidance for important decisions, who want to choose auspicious dates for weddings or business ventures, who need healing for physical or spiritual ailments. The ancient Maya understanding of time as sacred, of mathematics as a form of prayer, of astronomy as a way of connecting with divine forces, continues to provide meaning and direction for people navigating the complexities of modern life. The farmers of sacred corn in the fertile valleys and mountain slopes of Maya territory. Farmers continue to cultivate the sacred grain that has sustained their people for over 4,000 years. Corn, or maize, as it is known scientifically, is not merely a crop to the Maya, but a sacred substance from which, according to their creation stories, human beings were first formed by the gods. Picture Miguel, a farmer in the highlands of Chiapas, as he prepares his fields for the spring planting. The land he works has been in his family for generations, passed down through a system of inheritance that recognizes the sacred relationship between people and the earth that sustains them. This isn't just property in the Western sense, but a living partnership between human beings and the natural world. Miguel's farming methods blend ancient wisdom with modern necessity. He still observes the traditional calendar, consulting with the local daykeeper to determine the most auspicious dates for planting and harvesting. He still performs the ceremonies that ask permission of the earth's spirits before breaking ground. Still offers prayers and small gifts to ensure the cooperation of the forces that control rain and fertility. But he also incorporates practical knowledge accumulated over centuries of agricultural experience. The varieties of corn he plants are not commercial hybrids, but ancient cultivars that have been selected and refined by countless generations of Maya farmers. These varieties are perfectly adapted to local growing conditions, resistant to local pests and diseases, and capable of producing abundant harvests even in challenging environmental conditions. The system of cultivation he uses is similarly sophisticated. He doesn't plant corn in the neat rows that characterize modern industrial agriculture, but rather in a complex polyculture that includes beans, squash, and other companion plants. This system, known as the milpa, is one of the most sustainable and productive agricultural methods ever developed, capable of maintaining soil fertility and preventing erosion while producing diverse food crops that provide complete nutrition. As Miguel works in his fields, he often sings traditional songs that connect his labor to the cosmic forces that govern growth and fertility. The rhythm of his work matches the rhythm of these songs, creating a meditative state that transforms agricultural labor into a form of prayer. He doesn't see himself as conquering nature or extracting resources from the earth, but rather as participating in a sacred partnership that benefits both human beings and the natural world. When harvest time arrives, it's not just an economic transaction, but a spiritual celebration. The first ears of corn are blessed in special ceremonies, their kernels saved for next year's planting. The harvest feast brings the community together to share food, stories, and gratitude for the abundance that the earth has provided. This relationship with corn goes far beyond agriculture. It permeates every aspect of Maya life, from the daily preparation of tortillas that transforms kernels into nourishment, to the ceremonial use of corn pollen in religious rituals, to the metaphysical understanding that human beings are made of corn and will return to corn when they die. In maintaining this relationship, contemporary Maya farmers are not just preserving ancient traditions, but actively participating in the creation of sustainable agricultural systems that could provide models for addressing modern environmental challenges. Their knowledge of biodiversity, soil conservation, and sustainable production methods represents a sophisticated understanding of ecological relationships that took centuries to develop. The healers and the sacred plants. In Maya communities throughout Central America, traditional healers continue to practice medicine based on knowledge systems that integrate physical, emotional, and spiritual approaches to health and healing. Tese curanderos, as they're often called, or Alela in Maya languages, represent one of the world's oldest continuous medical traditions. Picture Doña Maria Healer, who lives in a small village in the Piton region of Guatemala, not far from the ancient ruins of Tikal. Her small house is surrounded by a garden that looks chaotic to outsiders, but represents a carefully organized pharmacy of medicinal plants. There are over 100 different species growing there, each one selected for its specific healing properties and its role in the complex web of Maya medical knowledge. When patients come to see her, Dona Maria doesn't just treat symptoms but seeks to understand the underlying imbalances that have caused illness. She uses a combination of methods that include herbal remedies, massage, prayer, and divination to determine not just what is wrong, but why it has occurred, and what spiritual or emotional factors might be contributing to the problem. Her healing practice is based on the Maya understanding that health depends on maintaining balance between opposing forces: hot and cold, wet and dry, light and dark. Illness occurs when these forces become unbalanced, and healing involves restoring equilibrium through appropriate interventions. This might mean prescribing cooling herbs for a hot condition, performing ceremonies to restore spiritual harmony, or recommending changes in diet or behavior that will help maintain balance. The plants she uses include many that are familiar to modern herbalists: chamomile for calming, willow bark for pain, relief echinacea for immune support, but also dozens of tropical species that have been used by Maya healers for centuries and are only now being studied by modern scientists. Her knowledge of these plants goes far beyond simple identification. She knows when to harvest them for maximum potency, how to prepare them for different conditions, how to combine them for synergistic effects, and how to use them safely without adverse reactions. But Donna Maria's healing practice extends beyond the physical realm. She also serves as a spiritual counselor, helping people understand the deeper meanings of their illnesses and the life lessons they might contain. She performs ceremonies to remove spiritual blockages, to heal emotional wounds, and to restore people's connection to their community and their purpose in life. Her patients include not only members of her own Maya community, but also people from other ethnic backgrounds who have learned to value the holistic approach that traditional Maya medicine provides. In a world where modern medicine often treats symptoms without addressing underlying causes, where patients feel disconnected from their healers and their own healing process, the Maya approach offers something that many people find deeply meaningful. This traditional medicine is not practiced in isolation from modern healthcare, but often works in conjunction with it. Many Maya healers recognize that certain conditions require modern medical intervention. Just as many modern doctors in Maya regions have learned to respect and work with traditional healers. The result is a system of complementary medicine that draws on the best of both traditions. The living languages. Perhaps nowhere is the continuity of Maya culture more evident than in the persistence of Maya languages. In markets, schools, homes, and ceremonial gatherings throughout the Maya region, over 30 distinct Maya languages continue to be spoken by millions of people, each one a unique window into the Maya understanding of the world. These languages are not relics or curiosities, but vibrant, living means of communication that continue to evolve and adapt to contemporary circumstances. In Guatemala alone, 22 Maya languages are officially recognized, making it one of the most linguistically diverse countries in the Americas. Each language represents a distinct cultural community with its own traditions, stories, and ways of understanding the world. Picture a classroom in a Maya community school where children are learning to read and write in their native language. The teacher, a young woman named Itzel, who studied linguistics at the university, but returned to her community to help preserve her ancestral language, writes on the blackboard in both Maya hieroglyphs and the modern alphabet that has been adapted for her language. The children are learning not just vocabulary and grammar, but the deeper structures of thought that their language embodies. Maya languages often have elaborate systems for describing spatial relationships, reflecting the Maya emphasis on understanding one's place in the cosmic order. They have multiple words for different types of knowledge. Knowledge gained through experience, knowledge received through revelation, knowledge inherited from ancestors, distinctions that reflect sophisticated epistemological thinking. These languages also preserve scientific and technical knowledge that has practical applications today. Maya botanical terminology includes hundreds of names for different plants and their uses, many of which have no equivalent in Spanish or English. Maya astronomical vocabulary includes precise terms for celestial phenomena and their relationships to earthly events. Maya mathematical concepts include sophisticated understanding of zero, infinity, and cyclical time that continues to influence how Maya speakers think about numerical relationships. But perhaps most importantly, these languages preserve the stories, songs, and ceremonial knowledge that form the heart of Maya culture. Epic narratives like the Popolva continue to be told in Maya languages, not as historical documents but as living stories that provide guidance for contemporary life. Traditional songs preserve not just entertainment but mnemonic devices for remembering agricultural techniques, healing practices, and ceremonial procedures. The persistence of these languages, in the face of centuries of pressure to abandon them, represents one of the most remarkable examples of cultural resistance in human history. During the colonial period, Maya languages were often suppressed by Spanish authorities who viewed them as obstacles to conversion and control. During the 20th century, many Maya children were punished for speaking their native languages in school, encouraged to abandon their backward traditions in favor of modern Spanish-speaking culture. Yet the languages survived, maintained in homes and communities by people who understood instinctively that language is more than just communication. It is the repository of a people's entire way of understanding the world. Today, there's a growing movement to revitalize Maya languages, with schools, universities, and cultural organizations working to ensure that these linguistic treasures are passed on to future generations. The sacred landscape for contemporary Maya people, the landscape itself, remains sacred, imbued with spiritual significance that connects them to their ancestors and to the cosmic forces that govern human life. Mountains, caves, springs, and groves are not just geographical features, but living entities with their own roles in the cosmic order, their own requirements for respect and reciprocity. Picture a Maya community in the Cuchumatanes Mountains of Guatemala, where the ancient practice of mountain worship continues to this day. The highest peaks are understood to be the dwelling places of the mountain spirits, powerful beings who control weather, fertility, and the general well-being of the communities that live in their shadows. Several times a year, community members make pilgrimages to these sacred sites, carrying offerings of candles, copal incense, flowers, and traditional foods. These aren't tourist expeditions, but serious religious observances that require preparation, purification, and careful attention to proper protocol. The pilgrims dress in their finest traditional clothing, fast before the journey, and approach the sacred sites with the reverence that their ancestors showed to the great temple complexes of the classic period. At the sacred sites, they perform ceremonies that blend pre-Columbian traditions with elements of Catholic practice, creating a unique form of Maya Christianity that honors both the ancient mountain spirits and the Christian saints who have been associated with them. The ceremonies include prayers in Maya languages, the burning of copal incense that has been used in Maya rituals for over 2,000 years, and offerings that ask for rain, good harvests, protection from illness, and harmony within the community. These sacred sites are often marked by simple stone altars or wooden crosses, but their true significance lies not in any physical structures, but in the spiritual energy that has been accumulated there through centuries of devotion. The Maya understanding of sacred geography recognizes that certain places have special power, special connections to the divine forces that govern the universe. This relationship with the landscape extends beyond formal ceremonies to everyday life. Maya farmers still consult the spirits of their fields before planting, still offer prayers and small gifts to ensure cooperation with the forces that control growth and fertility. Maya families still visit sacred springs for healing, still gather medicinal plants from sacred groves, still recognize the spiritual significance of the places where they live and work. Contemporary Maya communities often find themselves fighting to protect these sacred sites from development, mining, and other forms of environmental destruction. For them, this isn't just environmental activism, but religious freedom, the right to maintain their spiritual relationship with the landscape that has sustained their culture for thousands of years. The weavers of tomorrow, as the sun sets over the Maya world, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that seem to echo the colors of ancient murals. A new generation of Maya youth is finding ways to honor their heritage while engaging with the modern world. They are doctors who practice both traditional and modern medicine, teachers who instruct in both. Maya languages and Spanish artists who create contemporary works inspired by ancient designs, and activists who fight for indigenous rights while maintaining their cultural traditions. Picture Akbal, a young Maya man who grew up speaking Quechua in a small village, but earned a degree in computer science from a university in Guatemala City. Rather than abandoning his cultural roots in favor of modern success, he has found ways to use technology to preserve and promote Maya culture. He's developing apps that teach Maya languages, creating digital archives of traditional stories and songs, and using social media to connect Maya communities across international borders. His work represents a new form of cultural preservation that doesn't treat Maya traditions as museum pieces, but as living resources that can be adapted and applied to contemporary challenges. He is part of a growing movement of young Maya people who refuse to see tradition and modernity as opposing forces, but rather as complementary resources that can be combined to create new possibilities. In universities throughout the Maya region, Maya students are studying everything from medicine to engineering to international relations. But they're doing so without abandoning their cultural identities. They're creating new forms of Maya literature, new ways of expressing ancient wisdom, new approaches to community development that draw on both traditional knowledge and modern resources. Maya women are becoming political leaders, winning elections to local and national offices where they can advocate for indigenous rights and cultural preservation. Maya artists are gaining international recognition for work that draws on ancient traditions while addressing contemporary themes. Maya entrepreneurs are creating businesses that provide economic opportunities for their communities while maintaining cultural values. This isn't cultural assimilation, but cultural evolution, the natural process by which living cultures adapt to changing circumstances while maintaining their essential character. The Maya have always been innovators, always been willing to adopt new ideas and technologies that serve their purposes. The persistence of their culture through over 2,000 years of change demonstrates not rigid conservatism, but remarkable flexibility and creativity. The eternal cycle as we reach the end of our journey through the mysteries of the Maya civilization, we discover that we haven't really reached an ending at all. The Maya story continues, as it has for millennia, in the daily lives of millions of people who carry forward the wisdom of their ancestors, while creating new chapters in the long narrative of human culture. The great pyramids of Tikal and Palenque may stand empty, their builders long gone, but the spirit that created them lives on in every Maya child who learns to count in their ancestral language, in every weaver who creates patterns that echo ancient codices, in every farmer who plants corn according to the sacred calendar, in every healer who treats patients with plants that have been used for centuries. The Maya were never lost because they were never really looking for fame or permanence in the way that we might understand those concepts. They understood that everything in the universe moves in cycles, that civilizations rise and fall like the movements of the planets, that cultures transform and renew themselves like the seasons, that what matters is not the preservation of any particular form, but the continuation of the essential spirit that gives life. Picture one final scene as you prepare for sleep. A Maya grandmother sitting with her grandchildren under a ceiba tree, its massive trunk reaching toward the stars that wheel overhead in patterns, her ancestors mapped with mathematical precision. She's telling them stories that her grandmother told her, stories that carry forward the accumulated wisdom of thousands of years. The children listen with wide eyes as she describes the hero twins' journey through the underworld, the creation of human beings from corn, the marriage of earth and sky that produces the rains that nourish all life. These aren't just stories to entertain children, but teachings that will guide them through their own journeys, their own challenges, their own contributions to the continuing story of their people. As the grandmother speaks, her words join the vast chorus of voices that stretches back through the centuries. The voices of pyramid builders and calendar keepers, of healers and farmers, of weavers and storytellers, all united in the great conversation that connects the past, present, and future of Maya culture. The mystery of the Maya is not a puzzle to be solved, but a living reality to be experienced and celebrated. It's the mystery of how human cultures maintain their essential character while adapting to endless change, how wisdom passes from one generation to the next, How people find meaning and purpose in the midst of a universe that is always transforming itself. The Maya cities may have fallen silent, but the Maya people continue to speak. Their voices carry forward the ancient songs, the mathematical insights, the spiritual wisdom, and the practical knowledge that made their civilization great. They remind us that true greatness lies not in building monuments that will last forever, but in creating cultures that can adapt, evolve, and endure through whatever changes the future may bring. Closing, into the dreaming as you settle into sleep tonight, carry with you the knowledge that the Maya story continues. That somewhere in the highlands of Guatemala, a daykeeper is consulting the ancient calendar. That somewhere in the markets of Chiapas a weaver is creating patterns that connect earth and sky. That somewhere in the villages of Yucatan children are learning words that were old when the pyramids were new. Let your dreams be filled with the sounds of Maya languages flowing like rivers through the centuries, with the colors of textiles that tell stories without words, who understand that human beings are made of corn and stardust, connected to the earth that sustains them and the cosmos that surrounds them. The great mystery of the Maya is not that they disappeared, but that they never went away. They transformed, adapted, and continued, carrying forward the most essential elements of their culture through centuries of change. They remind us that the most important human achievements are not carved in stone but carried in the hearts and minds of people, who understand that they are part of something larger than themselves. In your dreams tonight, walk with them along the paths that connect the sacred sites. Sit with them in circles where ancient stories are told. Learn from them the patience of corn that grows in cycles, the wisdom of weavers who create order from chaos, the faith of calendar keepers who track the movements of time itself. The Maya legacy lives on in every act of cultural preservation, in every effort to maintain connection with ancestral wisdom, in every attempt to find balance between tradition and change. Their story is not just Maya history, but human history. The story of how we maintain our essential humanity while adapting to an ever-changing world. Rest now, and let the ancient rhythms of Maya time carry you into peaceful sleep. The calendar continues its eternal count. The weavers continue their patient work. The storytellers continue their sacred task of carrying forward the wisdom of the ages. The great mystery of the Maya is the mystery of continuity itself, the miracle of how cultures, like rivers, can change their course while never ceasing to flow. Sweet dreams, and may you wake tomorrow with a deeper appreciation for the living cultures that surround us, the ancient wisdom that continues to guide us, and the eternal human capacity to find meaning and beauty in the midst of change.